Good evening, friends. Though I debated even calling any of you that in my intro because you're not my friends. I hate fantasy football. I hate this league. Welcome to the show, Massillon Fantasy League, Week 13. At least you're not me, right, Dan?
At least I'm not you. I scored more than 57.4 points last week. So
this has got to be the third or fourth time this season that I'm the low score.
I was looking at some stuff. This year I've had 3 people I've gone against them on the best week they had all year.
And with that me, hurt. You got me on my second worst week because I had that 48 earlier this season. So.
I don't know. 57 is pretty good for your team. I think you overachieved. I was really hoping to beat you by 100. I gotta be honest.
That's the route I thought it was going. Well. Nate about to give us the 3 message of get him in on 3 different messages.
Hey, Nate, you know what? I mean, Ryan only scored 57.4 more points than you did last week in our league.
That's fair. Well, let's just get into it, Dan, because for my 3 things I learned, I suck, but Kenny only scored 2 more points to me, and that can't feel good heading into a playoff race. Not that Kenny doesn't have a shit ton else going on in his life right now, but let's throw on there that his fantasy team shit the bed. Now, to be fair, terrible bye week for Kenny's team, but this cannot inspire a lot of confidence in his bench that he can sustain an injury, Dan.
No. Kenny's really benefited from just a schedule like working out great for him.
And Jamar Chase.
That too, but he's had the 3rd easiest schedule in the league as far as points scored against him.
Yeah. So. I mean, he's going to get in the playoffs. He's going to win his money back, chip in a chair mentality, but you can't be happy with that. Dan, I pointed it out to you in the pre-show. Every matchup in the entire league was decided by more than 25 points last week. So you beat me by 95. Kenny lost by 80. The closest matchup would have been not the one we thought. Eric only beat Rob by 26. Taylor puts up 111 points and loses by 46. Steve Horvath loses by 37. Terry loses by 34. And Steve Weiss curb stomps JR. I guess I can't say anybody got curb stomped when he only lost by 59 when I'm out here losing by 90. So it's ugly.
Great week.
I'll throw Nate up on the screen. We can commiserate a little bit. So he said his other league is falling apart. Always sucks when that happens. You got cheating, tanking, colluding. He needs to find a good league. I'm telling you, we can. First of all, I do act like the king of the world as the commissioner.
Can verify.
But if there's an opening, Nate, we'll get you in here. I'll try to get it figured out. Don't need to put that back up. And then Dan, high score. Bobby wins for the 2nd time this season. This is kind of going the opposite route. Worst possible week of the year, and he still goes in and drops 158 points. I think it's like the 3rd or 4th highest score in the league this season. So as someone who's been your favorite of the league for basically the entire season, that has to be a good one. And that's with Brian Robinson getting hurt early in that game and only giving him 5 points.
I mean, if you look at his whole team, like Marvin Harrison only got him 5 points.
Yeah.
He had some guys that did not have great weeks, and he still dropped.
The big scores this season are always seemingly around picking the right defense and special teams, picking the right IDP, because obviously sacks are very, very big for the league, and that's something I'm probably going to have to look at in the offseason scoring. I feel like I may have broke it a little bit, but that's an argument for another day. Super interesting week 13, Dan. Not our week 12 rather. Not the week I wanted it for you, but I will say a very predictable week because you went 6-1. Darren went 6-1, and I went 6-1 in our picks. So literally no change in the contest.
We had some different picks last week. I thought we had more than that. It's crazy.
No, it was super close. So the only one, if I can find it in my notes, the only one you got wrong or I got wrong was Mott's Eric. And the only one you got wrong was Phil Terry. So, and then Darren, I think
right on that one.
Darren matched one of us pick for pick. I don't remember which one it was. So, yeah, very predictable week, very shitty week. There is very clearly a game of the week for this week, Dan. So we're going to work our way down. Oh wait, I'm on last week's.
You can leave that one up there. That's fine. No, leave that up there.
We certainly don't need to talk about that one anymore. Dan, I got Rob. a terribly inconsequential matchup. Right now, Sleeper has me projected to win this one by 42. I'm up 16. Obviously, Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday games have put a lot of points on the board that we didn't normally have, Dan. It actually like ruined a lot of the normal conversation we could have because I would normally look through lineups and suggest changes, but like not really a lot of room to do that. I get decent points out of Tyreek Hill and Sam Laporta, which is my, oh, you decide to show up now title on here. Rob gets a pretty bad day out of Christian Watson, mediocre days out of everybody else. It's looking like I'm going to run away with this one. I got myself picked to win, and Darren agrees with me, Dan.
I'm taking you. I think the nice lead you already have. Rob's team is underperforming pretty consistently. You've already off to a good start with some of your guys. I think you're going to run away with this one.
Stevie chimes in that sacks are a little bit OP, and yeah, Dan's actually the one that noticed that. I had it in my head. I think I explained this before, but in case you missed it, Stevie, I had it in my head that Sleeper didn't do what Yahoo did and conglomerate tackle for a loss, tackle, and sack into one score, and they do. So right now a sack is worth 7 and a touchdown is only worth 6. So I'll probably just make a sack worth 1 point less heading into next season. But again, I'll do some research on that and make sure we fix it. It has been like this for 2 years, so it's not like this was a surprise tweak that I made and fucked everybody over. It just didn't work out real well. Dan, we move on to Darren and Eric. So last year's rivalry now taking place in week 13. Obviously, there were some trades between these teams because these quarterbacks, if I remember correctly, were on the opposite teams earlier this season. Darren fighting for a playoff spot, technically still fighting for a bye week if things go the right way. Right? No, we have 2 10-win teams. Never mind. Darren is not going to likely get a bye week. Or no, he's not getting a bye week mathematically. And Eric technically is in a playoff race, but I don't see that happening either if he wins out. Regardless, right now, Sleeper has it as Darren with 13 points. Mahomes went in this one. Both RB1s had mediocre days. However, Devon Achane had a great day for Darren. Jalen Waddle kind of mediocre over on the other side. Bench points, Tua Tagovailoa, the 1 week Darren decides not to start him, has a monster week. Now, keep in mind, Darren has Jalen Hurts, so you don't have to be too worried about that. Dan, I'll let you get us started on this one.
Darren's just off to too good of a start without chain and having a big game. I need Darren to lose. So I'd like him to lose. I hope I get the game wrong, but I'm going to go with Darren to go ahead and pull out the win.
Darren and I are both picking himself. What I had in my notes, Dan, is this actually, when I did my little way of measuring games, this came out closer than I thought. But the big game from Achane and what I think is going to be a good day for McConkey is going to give Darren the edge at that RB2 spot and that flex spot. So that's why I'm picking Darren in that one as well. So
the guys that Eric's had go to already have more players, the same number of players, I guess, but just to be down already and just looking at the rest of his lineup, I don't expect much out of Cooper.
Yeah, not to mention down already, same amount of players like you mentioned, and then more importantly, Darren still has Jalen Hurts. So,
yep,
yeah, and then now Taysom Hill could change this game completely, but you never know when you're going to get that game out of Taysom Hill.
No, I can tell you when.
When they're playing you, right?
Yeah.
All right, we got Kenny versus Taylor. Taylor's tanking, 2 wins. Kenny's 8-4. Kenny technically has a chance if things went the right way at one of the final bye weeks. Right now, looking at this matchup, it is 39-15 after the Thursday games. Looks like a blowout on Kenny's end. Sleeper has this projected as a 46-point win. Kenny got a monster day out of Keenan Allen, 20 points. Another great day out of Jonnu Smith, 18 points. Meanwhile, Taylor had 2 guys going. Luke Schoonmaker got 6. DeAndre Hopkins got 8. Again, no big weeks here. Doesn't look like a lot of surprises, Dan. I'm going to pick Kenny. When I look at the notes, I think this is going to be a blowout. And the fact that Kenny's guys have already had good games just kind of seals the deal. This should be the worst matchup of the week.
I think Kenny wins. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think he's going to win by 20, 25. I don't consider that a blowout.
Oh, no, not at all.
Jonathan Taylor, his 3 out of his last 4 weeks have been 6, 4, and 2.
Yeah, he's been ass with Anthony Richardson back at quarterback. So.
Yeah, so I don't trust him to have a big game. Taylor, Jane Daniels could have a big game. Jackson Smith and Jigba has been doing great. I think he keeps it respectable.
There you go. Yeah, I love Jaden Daniels. I just like Herbert a lot this week too, so it was hard to give Taylor an edge there. It's Taylor's running backs really that scare me the most. He's just not going to get much production out of those. We will be skipping Greg and Rob P. Bobby wins because that is the game of the week. We will slide down to Terry versus you, Dan. Right now, projected as a 1-point Dan victory. You are currently up 16 points, 26-10. All of that production comes from defense and special teams. Dan, with the pickup of the week, the Dallas Cowboys. And Dan, they were actually my stream of the week for my club fantasy show. That touchdown, obviously, I say that touchdown obviously helped them out a great deal. Terry didn't get terrible production out of the defense with 10 fantasy points, but certainly not what you got from Dallas, Dan. And I'm going to pick you to win this one. I would have picked Terry when I was going through and doing my little scoring thing. I would have picked Terry, but you just beat him so bad on defense and special teams. And I think that's enough to give you the edge, Dan. It's too much for Terry to overcome at this point, and that's hilarious to say after one position in the books. But 16 points from a 16-point edge from a position that doesn't even always score 16 points, I think is just going to be too much to overcome for two very good fantasy teams right now.
I have outscored Terry for 4 straight weeks, so it needs to be 5. Terry's team has not been hot. He's been ice cold. Hopefully that continues. I'm going to take myself in a must-win situation. That will eliminate Terry from the playoffs. I think now Terry has no chance at this point, I don't think. But
yeah, Terry's sitting at 5-7. A 5-7 team could theoretically sneak in. Dan, a little sneak preview. My model has it back to 9-win teams are the ones getting in just with the way the schedule plays out. I have you as the first team out of the playoffs. So
yeah, I think the playoffs are set, but
yeah, that's kind of where I stand with it as well. So yeah, not looking good for Terry, just falling apart down the stretch. I agree completely. We move on to Horvath versus JR, two teams that are very disappointed in the season. Right now, they have, they being Sleeper, has Horvath projected to win this one by 14. Teams are basically even right now. Horvath gets a monster day out of Rico Dowdle, 20 points, but terrible day out of CeeDee Lamb, 4 points. JR gets a monster day out of Jaden Reed, 17 points, and then a 0 from Roschon Johnson. I actually had to go look. I was like, did JR start an out guy? But no, Roschon went out before scoring any fantasy points. And Micah Parsons pulls a 9 here, Dan. But unfortunately, if you haven't noticed it yet, the Miami defense really let JR down here. This is not a play I would have made starting the Miami defense in the cold in Green Bay, and it blew up in JR's face. -3 fantasy points. I think that's enough to give Horvath a late season win, hopefully one more point of luck. Well, not quite. He has to win again next week to get a whole nother point of luck, but I'm picking Horvath here. And Darren agrees with me. Me and Darren agree on every pick except the next one. So
yeah, I'm taking Horvath as well. It's going to be Urban should get him over the top, having 2 good running backs, but now CeeDee Lamb's had a bad day. Justin Jefferson does not look good.
No.
I'm in another league where I traded a fortune for him. I look like an idiot right now.
Yeah, I mean,
2 first-round draft picks to some guy.
I gave away all my picks, and oh yeah, that one, you bought him off of me. That's right.
I was wondering how long you were gonna go.
I was like, yeah, that's rough. Yes, that's the dynasty league we're in together, where I'm losing every week and don't even have my own pick, so it's doing me no good one way or the other. But hey, at least I have 2 1s, and I can try to rebuild that monstrosity next year. But no, you're absolutely right, Dan. I was noting that when I was looking at this team, that I don't know what to make of Jordan Addison anymore. Is he only going to go off in weeks where Justin Jefferson, where the other team decides to shut him down? And then is that going to lead defenses to needing to spend less time on Jefferson and at least trying to cover Addison? Because Addison was the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy last week. So
yeah, it's tough. But
yeah, certainly tough
to get into the win. So
I say certainly tough, but also depending on Sam Darnold. Do you make anything of Daniel Jones signing there?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just a high priority backup, if you will, in real football. Certainly nothing in fantasy.
Yeah.
All right. We move on to Stevie versus Phil, which would have been game of the week if we didn't have our 2 first place teams facing off against each other. Stevie sitting at 8 wins, Phil sitting at 7 wins. Phil jumps out to an early lead in this one, 61-44, and basically Sleeper is projecting the game to end with that lead. So they have Phil projected to win by 18. When you look at the matchup stand, Tyrone Tracy, a pretty decent day, 11 points for Stevie, but Josh Jacobs, 16 points for Phil. Only 8 points for Ross St. Brown. Meanwhile, 18 points from DJ Moore. And then you throw in the monster performance from Brock Bowers, 26 points. Meanwhile, Stevie got a lot of mediocrity from the defense and special teams. Brock Bowers lighting it up. Phil about to make the playoffs on a 2 tight end lineup that he started like 5 times this year, Dan, is pretty incredible stuff.
I need Stevie to win this game. I think there's a chance it does happen. I think he can make this up.
Okay.
And Saquon and McBride can go off and easily make up this difference. Because I think Phil's best players have all gone.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't think this is over. I need him to win, so I'm going with Stevie.
Okay, I was wondering. So this is the game where Darren and I disagree. And Dan, that puts me and you firmly on the opposite sides of one another. You and Darren are going to have all the same picks this week. Me and you are going to have one pick different to see if I can make up that one game on you. By the way, if you guys hadn't been following along, Dan is 1 game ahead in the pick'em competition, and because we all stayed even. So Dan is at 51 right. I'm at 50 right. Darren's at 48 right. Darren's not going to make up much ground this week because we're agreeing across the board. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. I'm picking Phil in this one. And honestly, it's hilarious again to look at one performance and say it kind of ended the game, but Brock Bowers just taking over 26 points out of the flex spot. And then you're dealing with a banged up Breece Hall, I think is the larger concern for Stevie. If they play him, how much are they going to play him? If they bench him, it opens up some interesting possibilities, Dan, because he has, Braylon Allen and Devontae Adams. So I'm going to put you on the spot. If Breece Hall is inactive tomorrow, would you go with Allen, the replacement running back, or would you go with the Adams, the more established wide receiver on a team that just looked like shit lately?
I would absolutely go with Braylon Allen.
I love that kid.
I love him too. I loved him in Wisconsin when he was there.
He was like a linebacker in high school and just learned how to play like the running back position. And then to make things even crazier, he got to college early. He's only like 19 or 20 years old right now or something like that. It's crazy.
Devontae Adams, 5'6", 17, 7'9". Not something I trust. I think that Allen has a much better chance of going off, getting those touches for the Jets than I believe Devontae Adams would.
Yeah, I think I'd go that same route. It's just impossible to trust Adams. I have him on a bunch of teams right now. I wish I had traded him after the trade to the Jets. I wish I had traded him after the one big game with the Jets, but I'm kind of in the same spot that Stevie's in right now where you're just kind of stuck with him. And it's teams that are fighting for playoff spots, and I can't even fit them into my lineup. So it's no fun. Dan, not too often we get a late season matchup of number 1 versus number 1 because they are tied at 10-2. Obviously, Bobby Wins has more points right now. But even more crazy is that this game is projected to end within 3 points of one another. Actually, 2 of the lower projections on the week, which is nuts. 102-99. After Thursday, Greg has doubled up Bobby Wins 35-17. However, Greg's quarterback is already off the board, 17 points from Jordan Love. Running backs kind of like balanced and canceled. They started the Detroit running backs against each other, 10 versus 5. No big deal there. Good game from Malik Neighbors, 11 points. It's been a while since we've seen him. Kirby Joseph puts out kind of an average performance out of IDP. So when you look this one over, Greg jumps out to an early lead. He is actually projected to be the one who loses this matchup, Dan. And I'm going to go with Bobby Wins. It is super close. When I did my little normal method where I give people points based on the edge they have on their competitor, this worked out to a tie. And when I look at a tie, I'm going to tend to lean towards the better quarterback. But the fact of the matter is this, he has to match Jordan Love. And I think he can do that because, Jordan Love played well. Lamar Jackson can play at least that well. But then I looked at Antonio Brown. No, not Antonio Brown. AJ Brown. And I think that's the extra edge. Because again, Dan, as I was pointing out, it's hard to trust Jordan Addison. You don't know when he's going to have his good week versus Justin Jefferson. And it's hard to trust Deebo Samuel in this current offense. Right now, I'm hearing bad weather in Buffalo. On top of bad weather in Buffalo, I haven't heard for a fact that Brock Purdy's starting this game. And that just kind of shoots Greg in the foot. And I think that's going to be enough for Rob P to take the dub in this one.
I'm taking Rob P. Bobby Wins as well. I understand Greg is 10-2, but we've said it all year. We don't love his team. I mean, the difference here, like Rob has had almost 1,500 points scored against him this year. Greg has had 1,100 points scored against him this year. Like,
good Lord.
That is a huge difference in schedule. So I think that's a lot of why he is 10-2.
Yeah.
It makes it tough. So I think that unless Bobby Wins just has a bad week, I think he's going to take that win. And kind of go with that when you're looking at the whole schedule thing. I mean, you have Bobby Wins has almost scored 1,500, whereas Greg's still at just past 1,300. So there's a huge difference in the amount of points they've scored as well. So
I agree. Like I said, yeah, and I agree with the statement you made earlier that I think the playoffs are set. I think it's these teams just based on win-loss record. I think you're the last man not making it in. Just a rough season the way it checks out, Dan. Nothing changes for me from last week, so I will read it off. I forgot to bring my phone over. Darren gave me his playoffs, but I think his playoffs are the same as my playoffs now. So Rob P, Greg, Kenny, Stevie, Darren, and Phil. I do think Rob P and Greg get the bye week, but I'm still going to stick with Stevie as my champion. He's given me no terrible reason to think his team's going to fall apart. When I look at his lineup, Dan, I love every bit of his lineup. I think he can take anyone in this team down in any given week. I'm keeping Stevie as my champ.
Bobby Wins as my champ, same playoff teams. I mean, it would take Phil losing to Horvath next week in order for me to get in, and I'd still have to beat Stevie, which is no easy task. I see that as the only way I'm getting in. Darren has a bye week next week against Taylor, so there's no way he's going to lose. So,
yeah, and looking at my projections for next week, and I haven't updated these in a while, but yeah, like I said, I agree with you. It's interesting for the season to begin. And this might be the earliest. Stevie said, "Why is there a smiley face next to his team points? Did you break it? What's high score mean?" That's why I like it. Like I said, I think his team's in good shape. I do think Greg is a pretender. Also, if Greg wins the championship, I have to shut the entire league down. So there's that draft turns around and wins a champion. I think it's a strong playoff suit. I think Greg getting that bye week is going to be a godsend for him because it gets him one round deeper in the playoffs than he should have been. That's for sure. Dan, last week in the game. Stevie, if you're still in the chat. Nate, if you're still in the chat, drop your favorite quarterback and flex play for the week 13 matchups. We're looking for the best quarterback and best flex play. Dan, you scored 22 last week, so it was a bad week for you in the game. Well, it was a great week for you in fantasy. I barely edged you out at 32, but Darren beat our asses with 53 points, and his flex play last week, which let me remind myself, he texted, it was Saquon Barkley was the top flex play on the entire week. So Darren had the top flex play with a decent quarterback play. Darren takes down his second win of the season. Dan, you're sitting at 4. Nate, Darren, and I are sitting at 2. So the worst you can do now is tie. You're going to win this competition. I'll ask you again for the 100th time, Dan. Do you want to go first or do you want to go second?
Go ahead, buddy. You might as well have something first over me.
There you go. You're a bastard, and I hate you. All right, I'm hoping I steal a guy from you. I think I'm going to steal one guy from you. So I'm going to start with my quarterback, and I am going to go Jaden Daniels. We mentioned it earlier that he could have a big game. I think they're coming on at the right time, but more importantly, you're starting to see injuries to their running backs. So Daniels is going to be asked to do more now. I think a rushing quarterback has a natural edge in this. Tennessee's defense hasn't been bad. I'm happy this is at home in Washington. I think we're going to see good Jaden Daniels this week, so I'm taking him. And Dan, my number one flex play this week is a guy who I'm really high on at the running back position. I have kind of playing to my flag. I think he's the RB1 this week, and that's going to be Joe Mixon taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags give up a ton of points to running backs. Houston has not been able to get a ton done through the air, even with the return of Nico Collins. This feels like another 3-touchdown Joe Mixon week and what should be a blowout win for the Houston Texans.
You're not stealing anybody from me. I'm going to go Burrow and Chase.
I was hoping you were going to go Mixon, but Burrow and Chase. You want to give any reasoning behind it?
He's been doing good lately, man. He
had one bad game, bro.
I thought he had a couple bad games there. Hold on.
It's one bad game.
Is it one bad game? Okay.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's up on the screen now.
Okay.
32 points against Dallas.
All right. I stand corrected.
All right, talk to me about the Bengals.
I mean,
let me start with the question that's on everybody's mind with every game this week. Is there weather in Cincinnati, or are you guys going to be fine?
No, they'll be fine. They'll be fine there. The only weather game you got to worry about is in Buffalo. But even that's questionable at best if it's going to be a weather game.
Yeah, that's what people are saying is it may actually affect travel to the game more than it might actually affect the game. Everything should be done by the time the game rolls around for that Buffalo game.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're from Ohio trying to get up there, you're not getting there. So
yeah, that's what I saw. The whole like Western throughway up here is like shut down. So
yeah. Well, we have my kids play hockey, and so some of our one of our teams from our organization is actually playing in a tournament in Buffalo this weekend.
Oh wow!
They had to drive up there and supposed to drive back, and they're like worrying because the highways are all shut down. How they're gonna get back? But yeah.
Yeah, I've had to drive that route the long way from where I live, and it sucks, but I don't know what you do when you're already in the middle of it. Because for me, I had to drive down into Pennsylvania and come across. It was super weird. So
I'm sure they have to do something similar.
Yeah, absolutely nuts. But you like the Bengals a lot this week then in that division game?
I mean, they've just been hot, and they're in a must-win situation, so I expect them just to do what they can to win.
I think that makes sense. I like all the Bengals this week. Burrow. I think Higgins could have another good week. It seems like when Higgins pops, Gesicki kind of goes away. But then Chase Brown's been playing really well as well. So I like what you guys got going. What's that?
Love Chase Brown.
Yeah, like I said, it took him a little while to get going. He's looked better than Zach Moss the entire season, and obviously Moss is now out. And it was just weird that they were still kind of splitting it. But now that Moss is out, they're just like, well, we're going to give you all the work you can handle, and he's killing it. So.
Even before Moss got hurt, it was tilting more of a 60-40 in Chase Brown's way. His just speed, and when he hits the hole, he's so fast.
I was following this.
Good running back there.
I was following the situation closely in the offseason, not as closely as you. But what I was hearing towards the end of the preseason was that it sounded like Brown was going to be the primary runner, and they were going to keep Moss in for passing downs because he's a good pass blocker. So, but we know what Chase Brown can do with the ball in his hands, and that just kind of sucked as someone who wanted to see Chase Brown pop off this year, is he's such an electric asset when he has the ball in his hands. I didn't want him out on passing down. So this getting him in on every play is working out quite well now. Certainly better for you. I don't actually think I have Brown in a single league. The Zach Moss 50-50 split just scared me off enough that I wasn't able to invest in him anywhere. So.
I got him in a few leagues. It's worked out nicely.
Yeah, I'd say so. All right, Dan, we're going to wrap up the Week 13 show. Congrats to the playoff teams. I hate every single one of you. The streak is over. Dan, I was thinking about this today. This will be the first time in Noah's lifetime that I'm not in the fantasy playoffs, and I just don't know how I feel about that.
Best year of his life. I'll make sure he knows it and remembers it.
Any parting words for our friends, Daniel?
I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed the holiday.
I don't even have anything negative to say. I hope Rob beats me. I don't deserve to win. None of this matters. Hate you all. Happy Week 13. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you guys next week.